The time has come for the Cobra to rise up and reveal himself.
Welcome back, my quiver of capitalists, to AP Economics, presented by Cobranomics, your all-American history teacher, gold standard of economics, le champion of classical liberalism, and sensei of supply side, Professor G here, and today we are going to continue with Unit 5, the Federal Reserve System, and the tools of the Federal Reserve in terms of implementing monetary policy. And just a little historical circumstances. John Maynard Keynes, our course's founder, dominated his economic theory, dominating world economics in the 30s, in the 40s, in the 50s, even into the 60s. But a group of economists, and most importantly, capitalists, said, the Montpellier Society said, led by Friedrich Hayek, with emerging economist and the real bringing back to the limelight of monetary policy and the Federal Reserve and the return of free markets. Milton Friedman does not get the credit he deserves in our Barron's book, but is also a Nobel Prize winner and one of the most important and influential economists of the 20th and into the 21st century. And these economists say that we need to not rely on the federal government to solve problems because, as Friedrich Hayek says, relying on the federal government is the road to serfdom. That the more the federal government spends and its bureaucracy increases, the more it encroaches on people's individual rights. And to an extent, I would think that unfortunately John Maynard Keynes dies in 1948, and there is a battle between Keynesians and pseudo-Keynesians, and I think John Maynard Keynes, as I said earlier, would agree that the federal government, its job is not full employment policy, but to kick the economy in the right direction and then withdraw itself. And this is in Keynes's writings. However, politicians in the time take Keynes's writings and then start making governments just practice full employment economics with government spending. And this new group of economists, this new capitalists, I mean even Winston Churchill loses to a socialist, and the man gets England and Western civilization through World War II. So this new group of economists say that we need to return to more free market ideas. And the way to do this is with less of a reliance on the federal government solving economic problems and more of a reliance on central banks and their role in an economy, and they should take a more prominent role. These economists are very important. They don't get the credit they deserve in our course. Our course is based around John Maynard Keynes, but after the AP test, there are lots of different economists that are worth reading and whose theories are worth knowing about. Hayek and Friedman definitely required readings, and like I said, it's as long as I probably said this in Unit 1, but voting is about making informed decisions, and it's about what you think is best for you, with what you think the government or Federal Reserve should do with money, and how that affects your life. So if you agree with Keynes or Friedman or Hayek or whoever, and there's tons of economists, all with different theories, just always make an informed decision. But for the AP test, there is some monetary policy. Again, on the AP test, the answer is always Keynes. We should say that, but the chapter doesn't really give the monetarists the recognition they deserve, and really how they steer economic history and theory in a different direction in the mid-20th century. And so that's just a little my little spiel for you. Okay, but for today, what is on the AP test is the Federal Reserve, is the power of the central bank, and monetary policy. And monetary policy, as we introduced in Lesson 1, the Federal Reserve controls the money supply, the amount of M1 and M2 in the banking system. Monetary policy is very simply the Federal Reserve's ability to control the money supply. We're going to take a look today at the three tools of monetary policy. But before we take a look at those three tools, we have to take a look at the targets of monetary policy. So the Federal Reserve indirectly controls these three very important banking vocabulary words. And it targets, these three vocabulary words are the target of central banks, and specifically our American Federal Reserve, when the Federal Reserve will use the three tools of monetary policy to adjust the money supply. So the Federal Reserve, very importantly, does not directly change these targets, but uses the monetary policy to change the money supply to then change these targets. The nominal interest rate, and some of these words, especially nominal and real, are reoccurring words. The nominal interest rate is the headline rate. It is unadjusted for inflation, but even though it is unadjusted for inflation, it is the rate we see and the rate people and businesses immediately make decisions around when they choose to borrow or to save. The nominal interest rate, like this general interest rate, the rate that everybody sees, also directly affects the federal funds rate. Now the federal funds rate is one of the worst vocabulary words in AP Economics, because there's always a confusion with this rate and the second tool of monetary policy, which is the discount rate. And it would make sense, it makes sense that one would be switched to the other, but it's not. So it's a very confusing vocabulary word, and the test always tries to trip you up on this word. So make sure you put a little star by it, and here you go. It's on the house, the star. The federal funds rate is the interest rate at which the Federal Reserve's member banks borrow from each other. So banks lend from each other and borrow from each other all the time. This rate at which they borrow from each other is called the federal funds rate, and the federal funds rate is based on the general nominal interest rate, the general banking system rate. And three, the real interest rate is most important to businesses when they are thinking about investment spending. Remember, anything real means that it is adjusted for inflation. So, is the interest rate adjusted for inflation? It is most important to investment spending. Why? Because when businesses investment spend, in order to investment spend, if you think about a business redoing the robots or computers in a whole factory, we're talking $10, $20 million. So investment spending has to be heavily financed through borrowing. And that's always money that business has on hand. So the real interest rate is very important because it's the real rate of return businesses are borrowing against. If a business has to borrow $10 million from a bank, it wants to know the adjusted for inflation rate that it's paying back to the bank. So the real interest rate is very important most important to businesses, and based on the nominal interest rate. So what the Federal Reserve is going to use monetary policy to do is to either raise all of these rates together, to slow borrowing, or should be a contractionary monetary policy, or the Federal Reserve will use its three powers, which we're going to introduce, to lower all of these rates, to lower the general nominal interest rate, which will do two things. It will lower, one, the federal funds rate, and then lower, two, the real interest rate, to encourage investment spending and encourage people using cash. So now, let's take a look at the three, so again, these are the three targets of the Fed. The Federal Reserve will use monetary policy to adjust the money supply When it adjusts the money supply, it will then change these three rates, which will then affect the economy. But for today, let's take a look at the three tools of the Federal Reserve.